Hello, my name's Marcus Philpott. I'm a tour manager with TravelSphere, and I've just got back from a great 3-week trip across Australia. There were 19 people that came along with me. We set off from Heathrow Airport, flew down to Dubai, and then took a second flight down to Perth. Luckily for us, when we arrived in Perth, it was the 26th of January, which is a huge day in the Australian calendar. They had a magnificent firework display to celebrate Australia Day. Perth really is a lovely city. We had an interesting city tour and went over to Fremantle, where we took the Swan River back to Perth on our first day, and on the second day enjoyed a trip over to the Yanchep National Park, where we saw our first kangaroos. So Aqua is the aquamarine park of Western Australia, and they have a very clever system in there where you get to see a lot of the marine life up close. These walkways go underneath the water, and a lot of these creatures are able to swim right next to you, literally. These are the famous black swans and the Sandalford Vineyard. We enjoyed some wine tasting there one afternoon. So tropical Cairns is pretty warm at this time of year. We took a 3-hour boat trip out to this pontoon that they have out on the Barrier Reef, and some of my guests went scuba diving. We went down in this little mini submarine that they have and had a great look at the reef up close. So the Skyrail Rainforest Cableway is a gondola system which runs along the canopy of the rainforest, right along the tops of the huge trees there. Really a tremendous way to view the forest. This is looking down onto the Swan River, and this is looking over to the Kuranda Railway, which we took later in the day. Now these things are called army ducks. They were originally used in the wars of the Pacific and are a tremendous means of transport for getting through the forest. They have a propeller on the back, they have wheels and a steering wheel, and they can go on land or in the water. So this is the beautiful Kuranda Railway. It goes back to the 1880s. Fantastic way to travel back down to Cairns. So next day we were heading up to the Daintree Rainforest. We stopped at this idyllic location on the way up to take morning tea at the Peninsula Hotel. Very civilised it was too. We had some lovely scones and clotted cream, and then had an excellent cruise on the river. The young gentleman that took us was a real wildlife expert, and a great way to have a look at the forest from the water. We enjoyed a fantastic lunch at the Daintree Tea House. This guy has lived out in the wild for many years and is very knowledgeable about all the fruits of the area.
Bye.
Quite a different sort of climate over in Alice Springs, much less humid than it was in Cairns. On our first evening, Jeff came to pick us up in his minibus to take us out to where he and his wife Denise live for a bush barbecue. What a fantastic experience it was. First thing we did was learn how to throw boomerangs. We had a couple of left-handers in our group, and Jeff provided them with some left-handed boomerangs. He was pretty accurate at catching this thing. We were very impressed. Phil from Wolverhampton showed a high level of enthusiasm, as did Barry, but it has to be said, neither of them demonstrated quite the same accuracy with their returns. We went to visit the School of the Air, where the children that live out in the bush receive their lessons remotely. Alice Springs, of course, is a pretty remote place, and we had a good idea of distance as we drove from Alice Springs down to Ayers Rock at Uluru, about 300 or so kilometres. These are the big road trains you see out there, and of course camels were used by the pioneers when Australia was first discovered. This was a dried up salt lake. And using headgear is to keep the flies off. And here we are, Ayers Rock. So sunset at Ayers Rock, champagne and canapes was a nice way to do it. So once we arrived in Sydney, we had time to go out for a little bit of an explore and settle into the hotel. We were situated right up in the rocks next to the Opera House and the bridge, and on our second day there we made a very interesting tour of the city. Bondi Beach was a great looking place. I wouldn't have minded having a go at the surfing. But call me old-fashioned, there's a lot of sharks in there. So we went over to the Featherdale Wildlife Park, where one has the opportunity to see a lot of these animals up close and personal, and then up to the Blue Mountains for the Skyway, which was just incredible views up there. All of us were sorry to leave Sydney. It's such a beautiful city. I have to say, I've never swum with a backdrop like that before. So we drove down to Canberra, and on the way down there went to have a look at the Gold Creek Sheep Station, which is run by Craig and his father John. Ray from our group thought that he'd like to have a crack at working with the sheep, and discovered it wasn't as easy as he thought.
Here he comes.
Alright, so we've got medium, well done, and medium rare.
So our final flight was from Canberra down to Melbourne. I didn't have a lot of opportunity to film much down there, but another wonderful city. And we also had a great experience going over to have a look at the penguins. Again, one is not allowed to use photographic equipment down there. So we wound our trip up on a wild and windy south coast.